Good morning, everyone. Just a quick note, just a quick comment. We wanted to shed light to a topic which will always be a topic. It will never end, which is research, because research is not only the evaluation of the performance of the station, but it's also a tool for the commercial radios, at least, for the revenue. And I would like to invite the moderator. The moderator of today's session is a lady who has been in both sides. She had been working for a research company for a long time, and then she worked for radio for, again, a long time. So she's been in both sides. And now she moved to a telco, but we still love her. She's a radio lover. So please welcome Georgia Diamandaki.
Good morning. It's a real pleasure being here with you today. So whether you are a researcher like me, whether you are a broadcaster, an advertiser, or simply passionate about the science behind radio, today's discussion will highlight how we measure, we analyze, and understand the ever-evolving world of audio. After all, we all heard during these past days how important it is to rely on accurate data to understand our audiences, measure our impact, and make informed decisions. Radio remains one of the most powerful and enduring forms of communication, but in an era of rapid technological advancements and changing lifestyles, understanding audience behavior, preferences, and engagement is more critical than ever. So to me, the question isn't just how we measure, but what we should be measuring. Are we capturing true audience behavior? Are we adapting fast enough to new platforms and devices? And most importantly, how do we ensure transparency and reliability in our metrics? In this session, we will explore key methodologies used across different markets, from traditional diary and day-after call to electronic and hybrid measurements. We'll compare measurements, we'll discuss strengths and limitations of various techniques, and we will look at emerging trends that will define the future of radio analytics. So we have three speakers with us, all three gurus in their field, so I'm pretty sure they'll have very interesting things to share with us. And we decided to go from north to south. So we have first Mr. Kristian Tolonen, which is the head of audience research from NRK Norway. Then we will then we have Mr. John Carroll, Director of Research and Audiences from Rajar, UK, and Mr. George Petrakos, who is a professor here in Pantheon University and the auditor of the currency research here in Attica. So, Kristian?
Should we clap it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so a quick rundown on how we measure and report radio in Norway. First things to know about Norway, about 5 million people, high BNP, high happiness, healthy democracy, strong commercial media, strong public service media, lots of mountains and fjords. Now, the high BNP thing is important because that means traditionally we have money to invest in measurement. Okay, so about radio. We had a big discussion some years ago about shutting down FM. Now, that was in 2017. Time has gone. 68% of the people have a DAB. We have even 78% of the cars have DAB radios. So we're basically done with the shutdown discussion. Radio is DAB, DAB is radio. 58% daily reach for radio, 83% weekly reach, about almost 80 minutes daily listening. I'll come back to some figures later. We have almost 40 national radio channels on DAB now. Before we shut down FM, it used to be only 5. So there's a big difference in terms of what kind of offer the audience has. There is still some local radio on DAB and also on FM. And also worthwhile to mention is that podcasting and streaming of radio are both increasing in Norway. About 20% of the population listen daily to a podcast, and streaming of radio channels through online is now at 11%. So mostly all the radio channel listening is still DAB, but there is an increase in a bit of change now that we've been seeing the last 2 years for the whole of the sound market, basically. So moving on to measurement. Yes, we did do survey measurement too. In 1992 to 2006, we had a KT measurement done by Kantar. So they called around and asked people for their radio habits. And then we went to electronic back in 2006. So we have had 3 contracts with Kantar with the licensed PPM, portable meter, up to 2018. And currently, and the last contract, we have Nielsen now. Firstly with the PPM 360 and now with the wearable PPM, and I'll get back to that too. So we've been doing electronic measurement for quite some years. So why go electronic? And yes, it was a revolution. First and foremostly, the broadcasters, both the commercial and the public service, decided that this was an investment for the future. The commercial side, for them it was really important to compete with TV for the big money. And to compete with TV, who have high standards of measurement, you need to have high standards of measurement too. And all of us agreed that we need better measurement to get more insights about the audience and then through that give them better content. In terms of politics and governance, the measurement is owned by Viaplay, P4, Bauer, and NRK. Nielsen is the current contractor, and we have a media owners committee, which is the 3 parties, and we meet with Nielsen minimum monthly. All data are shared and open to all the parties, so we have all the data for the commercial radio, and they have for us, and all the media agencies obviously have all the data too. If we want to do audits, we can do it, but there's no regular audit as the system is now. And we're always open to get new parties or third parties measured. Currently, there's not that much radio in Norway that isn't measured, but there is a little bit that we would like to have included into the measurement. So, about the methodology, which is a hard word to say without drinking water, but I actually did it. Yeah, and it's also a good thing to let you look at that picture for a second. So we have 2,000 net reporting panelists, 10 years plus. They're wearing the personal portable meter, which is called a wearable from Nielsen. You can see a picture from it. The old electronic meters, they look like pagers. For those of you who are old enough to remember pagers, these ones look more like smartwatches. So you can either have it as a wristband, or you can have it as a pendant, or as a clip in the belt. We also have beacons in the household to measure when people are listening to radio at home and when they're not at home. And there's also a companion app for the people who are in the panel so they can more easily be in contact with Nielsen. We include 7-day catch-up listening, and then there's also a headphone modeling system here because headphone measuring is quite difficult to do, so we need to have a model in it, which is a typical thing they do also in Sweden. We would like to do that a little bit better. And basically what the meter does is measure when you're exposed to the sound of radio. What is delivered? Minute-level data. They are the currency, all time bands, all days, all intervals, reach, frequency, and listening time. So that means that you can basically build any metric that you want to. You have data for channels, for content, and for ads, as long as we deliver the metadata to Nielsen. And there's a software and a data delivery through APIs, if you need it, to the media and to the agencies. So just a few pictures of data now. I really had to concentrate not to show a lot of data, so I'll only show 2 slides because the data thing is always the most fun thing, not the politics and the governance and the money, which is the most important thing. This is the story of electronic measurement of radio in Norway from 2006, and those bars denominate different contracts and also the shutdown period in 2017. As you can see, radio is pretty stable in Norway. About 3 million people listened to radio back in 2006. Now it's 2.8, and we have a population of 5 million, 12 years plus. So it's pretty stable, even if it's gone a little bit down. But listening time was in 100 minutes, and now it's currently at 80, so there's a bit more change than there has been. But if you showed this picture towards TV, then the picture would be completely different because TV has been going a lot down since the big days in 2010. And radio is now currently the biggest reach media in Norway. So if you look at perhaps the most interesting data I would think about was the location data, because you have the beacons. So you can look at how many people are listening to radio in home, and you have the biggest numbers on the top there in the morning and in the afternoon. Then you have also the listening out of home, anywhere place, and then you have the listening in car, which is also added into it. And you can see when the drive time is, and you can see when people are listening to radio in the car before they listen to radio when they come home, and then they shut down radio and watch TV. Radio is doing very well commercially now in Norway. In 2010, radio had 6% of the gross ad spending. Now it's 10%. Radio is one of the top 4 growing ad spend media. Cinema, outline, and outdoors are the other ones in 2024 with a 5.8% year-on-year growth. And podcast spending is also increasing. So the total market, which you're not able to see here, is about 80 million euros. Of that, 70 million euros is radio. And I'm pretty sure my commercial friends in radio would say that they would not be in this position without the electronic measurement of radio. I said that very silently. I should say that a little bit louder. I think that the commercial media would say that we would not be in this position if we hadn't have electronic measurement of radio. So, final slide, a couple of pros and cons about electronic measurement. Well, the pros is it's exposure, not recall. So that means all the radio listening that happens, which you can't remember in a survey, is included. It's daily, actionable, minute-level data. It's a big daily sample, 2,000 every day. And it's comparative data to TV. And also the location data. Then on the con side, you might argue that exposure and not recall is also a con. Because people who don't remember what radio channels they listen to, what kind of listeners are they? Are they worth it? I would say that they're worth it because they might remember the ad. Also, you might get less reliable data for smaller targets. If you look at young people on a smaller radio channel at a certain slot in a day, yesterday data, then it would be quite a small sample. But the solution obviously is to widen the measurement period to, for example, a week or a month. And this one is the big, it's in small letters, but it should have been in the big letters, because this is obviously the biggest con about moving to electronic measurement. It is very much more expensive than survey measurement. But then again, survey measurements have been growing in price, as I can, at least in Norway, whilst these type of measurements have been going down in price with technology. And lastly, going to electronic, there's a big change in method, and the results are painful. So when we went to electronic measurement back in 2006, and it's been the same in many other countries too, you get more reach, because you'll have all the listening opportunities that people can't remember, but you will get lower time spent, because you measure much more exactly. So in a survey, you would get like 5 minutes listening if you have been listening in a 5-minute slot. In the electronic measurement, you will get the actual 3 minutes of listening. But then again, that grows confidence into the data too, so you can trust them much more. So going electronic is a big leap. We did that in 2006, and we never leapt back again. We're quite happy with the electronic measurement, and I think our commercial friends would say the same thing. Thank you.
Right, let's go 1,200 kilometres southwest from Oslo to London and talk to you about the UK radio measurement system. So we are called Rajar, which stands for Radio Joint Audience Research, and we were founded in 1992 to be the UK radio industry's official audience measurement system. We're jointly owned by BBC, a public service broadcaster, and Radio Centre, who represent the commercial radio in the UK, and we have representation from the agencies and the advertisers, so we're called, what's called a JIC in the UK, a joint industry currency. We have two contractors, Ipsos, the primary contractor, they collect all of the data, and RSMB do the sampling, weighting and quality control. And if I was to describe to you what we do in one line, I'd say we publish average weekly live radio listening for over 350 stations 4 times a year. That's the currency that we deliver. We do provide other data as well, which isn't for currency, it may be just for the stakeholders. So we have some monthly data, and maybe some of our component parts of the methodology is provided to provide some insight, if you like. And we also make available a survey called Midas, which is our audio measurement survey, a share of audio, which is available on our website if you want to see the latest report. But that's a whole different presentation. Coming back to radio. So, brief history of Rajar. It started in 1992. The very first contract was paper diaries, household measurement, and the stations were pre-printed in all the diaries. And before long, that became unmanageable. More and more stations in the UK, more complex requirements. So the second contract evolved into what we call personalised diaries. So each individual that participates in the survey have their own repertoire of listening, will be their stations in the diary. They can add others, of course, in the listening week, but they became personal diaries and therefore also an individual-based sample. Then on the third contract, we introduced some enhancements to the sampling and weighting, and also introduced platform of listening to the diary. But we also evolved from just being a paper-based diary to introduce online diary and also a mobile diary into the measurement. Very much a respondent-led decision. If respondents wanted to choose one of those that suited them best, that would maximise compliance and completion for the diary. Then that took us through to 2020, and everything just stopped. With COVID, of course. Very much an interviewer-led, knocking on doors methodology, and of course we couldn't do that. Everything stopped, the measurement stopped, reporting stopped. And we spent a very, well I didn't, I hadn't joined Rajar then, but my predecessors had a very stressful time, obviously trying to work out how do we get going again, how do we provide the data. Now that's a whole other presentation, I don't have time for that. I've missed out a whole bit of history for you, and we ended up with this. This is the hybrid methodology that's been in place since COVID. If you remember, we had a 25,000 a quarter sample of diaries prior to COVID. Post-COVID, we have 15,000 diaries with interviewers knocking on doors to recruit individuals to participate in the diary. We also have a online diary boost panel, and I'll explain a bit more shortly. And we also have a passive meter panel of 5,000 panelists. These are the three components now of our hybrid methodology. But the core of the methodology is the diary sample, as it always has been. Now, don't worry, I'm not going to go through this in tremendous detail, but suffice to say it's a very complicated system, and deliberately so, because we have to measure 350 stations, or indeed more than 350 stations, 80 of which are national, 270 are local or regional stations. And we have a one-size-fits-all measurement, so we treat all stations equally when it comes to the measurement and reporting. Each station, based on their transmission areas, where the transmitters are, we would overlay the postcode districts that best fit that transmission area, and they become the total survey areas. We then map all those total survey areas across the UK, and of course they will be overlapping with each other. And each overlap is, we call a segment. So we have 350 geographic segments, and we have to make sure that there are sufficient interviews in each of those segments so that they can be weighted back up to represent the TSAs for each of the stations. And that colourful map is just an illustration of all the overlaps that we have to deal with, and make sure that the interviewers can go out in each of those areas. The population size of the survey area will determine the sample size needed, for the minimum sample size needed for reporting, and indeed the reporting period. So for example, for a station that has at least 4 million adults in its area, they can publish on 3 months of data, a quarterly data set, and they need a minimum sample of around 1,000. But obviously the national stations will have the national sample of 15,000 plus. For the smaller stations, so less than 500,000 population, they would need to report on a yearly sample, a 12-month sample, and a minimum reporting requirement of 500 individuals going into there. So we have to sort of put all of that together in our sampling for the face-to-face recruitment of diaries. But the task that they're given is exactly the same in principle. The diary is available on a mobile app. There's an online sort of PC and laptop version, and there's a paper version. And it's a choice of the respondent, what their preference is, that will help maximise completion. But what we ask them to do is exactly the same thing. We want 5 bits of information. What station were you listening to? When were you listening? For how long? Where? So at home, work, in a car, or how? So what platform of listening? So is that FM, DAB, online, mobile, smart speaker, and so on. That's, in essence, what we collect from our respondents in the diary. We also have the 2 panel components as well, so as part of the hybrid methodology. One is the 500 diary boost panel, where we recontact previous Rajar respondents in what we call hard-to-reach groups. So these are demographics, if you like, with the highest weights, perhaps the lowest completion rates for completing the diary, and very costly to reach as part of the main methodology. But if we've already captured them and they're willing to take part again, it's very pragmatic to go back and use them in the sample. And what we get them to do is to complete a 7-day online diary each month, and then that works its way back into the currency to help improve the sample profile of our data set. The other component, quite different compared to diary, is our metered panel. Now, Rajar have been looking at, trialling, playing with, observing metered data for well over 20 years prior to its introduction onto Rajar. At heart, the data is very different to the diary measurement, and as you heard from Kristian, it's a lot more expensive. So there's no compelling reason to switch to electronic measurement. But nevertheless, thinking again what we went through in the pandemic, it was very practical and sensible, and indeed it was a catalyst actually for bringing it into the survey, so we're able to have it in the measurement going forwards. So what we do, we collect the 5,000 panel. Each of them has an app on their phones, which is an audio matching app. So it basically, from the microphone on the phone, listens to the audio, not all of the audio, just the radio stations. And that's captured and matched to the reference database of what was live, broadcast live at the time. And that forms the data set from the metered panel. And then we go through a process of converting those listening into virtual diaries each month. And the reason we do that is the need to maintain a single currency. With the hybrid methodology, it's important to calibrate to one established currency so that all stations in all areas are treated equally. Now for us, that's the diary. That was the incumbent measurement. That's also the largest component of the hybrid methodology. And that's what was agreed with the stakeholders to go forward and being what everything sort of comes back to. And for us, it delivers the best of both worlds when it comes to the diary and electronic. We have the continuity with the listening levels, and also very practically, immediately after COVID, when we were going back again live, it had the same data format for trading, so the computer bureaus did not have to rewrite all of their systems and add even more delay to coming back to publishing data. Having that electronic measurement facilitates exploring further integration with digital data sets, which is an attractive proposition. And also, and I'm obviously not wishing this, but if we were to go through another pandemic and we would lose all of our sort of interviewer-based resource, we would have a component of the methodology that can keep going and perhaps keep producing some data to the market. Just got one slide on data. This is this one. This is available on our Rajar website, so you can go to rajar.co.uk and have a play with yourself. But this is, in essence, what we report to the market. We have all radio, which is 87% of the population listen to radio in an average week. And our definition of radio listening is to have listened to at least 5 consecutive minutes of radio in the week, and you are a listener. There's over 1 billion hours of radio listening in the UK, which equates to just under 21 hours per listener across the week, or 3 hours per day on average. And this is available all the way down for all the 350 stations, and they group together, for example, all BBC, all commercial radio. And the public service station, BBC Radio 2, is the largest station in the UK with 24% reach and 14% share of listening. As I say, that's all publicly available for you to have a look at. What the stations also get are reports, much more detailed information, day part listening, audiences by half hour across different days of the week, also competitor information within their own total survey areas as well. So those 11 tables, bizarrely tabled from table 0 to table 10. I don't know the history behind that, but anyway, 11 tables which they get every quarter to mine the performance of the data. So, just to summarise, our Rajar current system is a one-size-fits-all design, and it's a product of the needs of various parties, and that's very much stakeholder-led, and we have to respond to what the stakeholders want. And we're balancing the needs of national versus local stations, BBC versus commercial, analog versus digital, music versus speech, and so on. So in essence, it's almost the lowest common denominator, but it's the optimal design that meets all of those needs. For us, the diary drives the system, but there's two supporting elements with the panels. One is to augment coverage, the sample representation, and the other is to provide stability, particularly with the listening hours. And our hybrid methodology facilitates a future digital-first measurement approach. Connected listening is growing. It won't be too long in the UK that forms the majority of listening, and therefore, obviously, a wealth of digital data is available, and it makes sense to dial that up in the hybrid methodology and maybe dial down other components. There we are. Thank you.
So this goes next. Okay. Good morning. It's a great pleasure to present today the CATI Day After Recall survey on radio ratings in Athens, Greece. The project integrates scientifically rigorous methodology into survey practices and audits with practical applicability for the variety of users. The survey addressed to the permanent residents of the Attica region, aged between 15 and 75 years old. I think I'm going to use the water. With 160 daily interviewers, 44 weeks per year, based on a random selection from a dual sampling frame. The sampling method is stratified random sampling with a triple weighting scheme. The DAR methodology runs for 25 years, at least. Over the last quarter of that period, there are some major updates. From quota sampling to random sampling, from landline to a mixed mode. Nowadays we are 65% on mobiles, 35% on landline. From one contractor to two contractors and one third trusted party. And from monitoring to auditing. The survey relies upon four dimensions: collaboration, transparency, methodology, and auditing, in order to build trust for participation and inspire confidence for use. Collaboration extends beyond the two contracting companies to a wide range of stakeholders, including radio station, advertising agencies, and academic units, acting as users, monitoring committees, researchers, and auditors. Transparency is in every step of this process. Everything is fully documented and accessible. Random number generator operated by a third trusted party, which is the research team from the Paddy University. The design and the methodology are documented and published, even are taught in classrooms. And also GDPR and auditing standard compliance ensures project quality and reliability. In the center of the methodology is randomness. Um, and we built around a balanced design with a dual frame, 2 contractors, 2 modes of data collection, morning, evenings, weekdays and weekends. And all that story produced several estimates, like the average daily reach in numbers and percentages, average weekly reach, average number of stations, average listening duration per listener, and audience share, among others. Also reporting, which is very important for the process, with metadata reporting, both daily and monthly, along with results that are reported bi-monthly, in bi-monthly reports and in bi-monthly press release, as well as in the annual results report. Now the users are getting the results from these reports, but they are also using a platform that they can get results by querying at any time and any period, getting all these indices and much more. The last part of this process is auditing, which a multi-tier audit procedures comprise from external audit, internal audit, and monitoring. External audit mainly refers to metadata and paradata analysis, as well as data checks for integrity and other ad hoc checks. To be more specific, metadata is data about data. There is a regular reporting daily and monthly on metadata. So we keep track on daily number of interviews, among others, response rates, sampling distribution along to gender and age, and other KPIs. So in analyzing these reports, make sure that there is compliance with a sample design. Now, paradata is data about process and refers to the interviews. So there is a daily effort to collect paradata. Those 4 categories, initial paradata, having to do with the date and time, duration, number of redials, until we achieve a complete interview. And then we have other dimensions like compliance. We have used the standardized mode, so the interviewer reads the questions and the possible answers and repeat them just in the way that they are in his screen or her screen. And we make sure that all responses receive the same information from the interviewers. So we have picked up this standardized mode, and we check on it. Last one, probing. The probing code ensures that the interviewers has to be unbiased, neutral, and discreet. In conclusion, there are several key methodological strengths, including the use of a random number generator operated by a TTP and not from the contractor companies. We're using a by-the-book random sampling scheme on a dual sampling frame, so we can generalize our results and get numbers regarding the population and not the sample. We have a a balanced survey design with a dynamic weighting adjustment. That means that we do the weighting the way we were querying for the results from the system. And finally, a multi-tiered auditing system encompassing both data and process validation. And with all this, we expect to bridge academic rigor with practical application and succeed in inspiring confidence rather than merely seeking trust to the survey users and media community. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. I think we have 5 minutes for questions, so if the audience... excuse, you have a microphone? No. Oh.
Hello, my name is Renata, I'm from Portugal, and I would like to make a question to Kristian. In matter of fact, 2 questions. One is about the costs of PPM. If you can talk us a little bit about it when you do the transaction to PPM. The second one is about you are a small country also, and the results. The first time you study the PPM, what is the main difference of the results, if they are, from the usual measurement method that you have?
Well, to the first part about the price, because that's what you're asking about, yes. I cannot say that. Now, the reason for that is that there are about 4 companies in the world that do this kind of electronic measurement of radio, and the competition between them is quite fierce. So giving out prices will make it hard for them to compete. But I can say that they approximately cost the same.
No, you have a measurement study, and then you change to PPM.
Yeah.
How much the growth of the costs? Double, triple? More or less. More or less. Is much more expensive, or is it the same?
It would be much easier if I could remember what the price was in 2005. Because, I mean, that's 20 years ago. And I do remember a lot of stuff, but I don't think it would be fair to answer it, because I would probably answer it wrongly.
But it was more expensive.
Yeah, but it was more expensive, yeah. But no. You've been there. Would you like to try? He can try. I'm putting him on the spot now. That's bad behavior from me. Sorry. Yeah. In terms of the change of data, just to answer that quickly, I mentioned it, but the first and foremost things that happened, and we expected it, was that you did get higher reach. I don't remember exact percentages, but it went up quite a lot in reach, because you did get all those small listening opportunities on a minute level data, and also throughout the day. So just using a stupid example, I always used, if I go to the hairdoer, you know, the hairdresser, thank you. Thank you, I don't even remember what it is. And there's a radio channel in there. I would probably not remember what radio I was listening to, but I was listening to radio, right? Or in a taxi or something like that. So those opportunities were included. So you did get higher reach. But in the old measurement with the survey, you asked people, and if they said between 12 and 12:05 that they listened to radio, then you get 5 minutes of listening. The truth was it was 3 or 2 minutes. So you get a much lower minutes, but then the minutes would be accurate. So that was the biggest change.
Thank you.
We have another question.
Hello, I am Andrei Taranov from Suspilne, Ukraine, from Ukrainian Public Broadcasting Company. May I ask Kristian and John about evolving into the digital measurement, speaking both about wearables or smartphone-based applications? Have you got any plans or any discussions about measuring total audio-visual consumption, meaning that, well, they definitely work with television and any video consumption as well? Do you have any plans for that or discussions in the industries for that?
Not on my side. I mean, Rajar is, the stakeholders are the radio companies. So their interest is audio rather than visual, and they fund the measurement. So unless we merge with Barb in the UK, which I think is unlikely, no, the interest will be radio and audio.
Oh, but BBC is still both.
It is still both, yes, and they get their TV data from Barb, and they have their own panels. They have a cross-media panel as well. But for the industry measurement for radio, it would be through Rajar, yeah.
Okay, do you have a last question?
Should I answer too?
Oh, of course.
If it's okay. Yeah, try to be quick. We're very happy with the radio channel measurement. It works good. We would like to have a total audio measurement. It was in the tender the last 2 times. And even Nielsen has had the best radio measurement, but they didn't offer any good measurements for total audio. And total audio is more difficult because podcasts are a different kind of content than radio channels, but we would like to have total audio. As NRK is a public service media, which is also on online and TV, we would like to have a complete measurement of everything in the same service like BBC has in the Compass system. That would be the best thing to have. And in the new TVOV 2, which is a TV and streaming tender, which will be coming out hopefully this year, there will probably be the opportunity to the vendors to offer us that. NRK would like to have everything in one place. But that's also a political question, and it's also about cost and everything. So we'll see what happens.
Okay. Sorry, the time is up, but I'm sure you have a lot of more questions, and our lovely speakers won't mind if you disturb them in the break to ask them your questions in person. Thank you.